to following the rule of law? You think also police is really up to scratch? And what Aaron Cheroti is telling us about the vetting of Hilary Mutyambai, you think also is picking orders from the executive as far as following the rule of law is concerned?
First of all, Debarl, it was on this show severally when I quoted Sir Thomas More, and I said I will give the devil the benefit of the law for my own benefit. At that time, my colleague Aaron Cheroti and a host of others did not seem to understand the rationale and reasoning behind that. And I quoted it severally when week after week we were here. At one time, you remember, I was in the case of Miguna, and of course the government refused to obey the orders, and that is what I insisted on. At another time, you'll remember I was representing the Honorable Babu Owino.
Yes.
We got orders in court for his release. We went to the basement. The police refused to release him and actually physically carted him away. And I had to use a bit of what I thought was my physical strength to try and yank him away, but they got the better of me because there were very many. So the first point to make is that we must be prepared and stay true to the rule of law and democracy, whether we believe we are in power or not. For when you believe you are in power and the constitution and the rule of law is breached and you celebrate, there come a time when it will come to you. And I think that is the first moral of that story. I believe, secondly, that the rule of law ought to be followed. And it should not just be followed because now you believe perhaps you are not in the good books of those who are exercising state power. I don't think that it's just an issue of the new IG. All the issues that arose when Miguna issue was there, when Babu Owino's issue was there, when TJ's issue was there, and a host of others, the new IG was not in office. It was a different IG. So it's not a question, in my view, of the current IG. It is a question of a certain type of thinking of the large section of this administration. And this administration has been there since 2013. So let us put the blame where it lies. Let us not single out some individual who was only recently appointed and try to ascribe all this blame to them. I think, thirdly, I made this point then, and it is true now. There's a certain thinking that has permeated the police and to an extent also permeated the judiciary of trying to use prosecution as a tool in itself, rather than prosecuting persons and then punishing them as a tool. The Constitution is clear, and I'm very clear on this. I have always been clear, and my sympathies goes to those who may have suffered. If you look at Article 49(1)(h) of the Constitution, it clearly states that every person has the right to be released, every arrested person, the right to be released on bond or bail on reasonable conditions pending a charge or trial, unless there are compelling reasons not to be released. And sub 2 is even more clear. A person shall not be remanded in custody for an offense if the offense is punishable by a fine only or by imprisonment for not more than 6 months. All these two tenets have been breached, not just now in respect of Moses Kuria. They have consistently been breached. The problem is that whenever we raised all those issues, a very significant section of the population, even of our colleagues, would defend it. And for that reason, they entrenched the thinking that it was okay. That thinking that was entrenched that it is okay is what's now affecting them now. And so as we decry that kind of practice, we must start by asking those of them who perpetuated that thinking to not only apologize, but to stand with us and be able to state that whether it is a person of your political thinking or not, it is wrong. It is wrong even now. When Moses Kuria was arrested, and I saw there was a lady on TV who was complaining of assault, the first thing we should say is that whether you're a member of parliament, whether you're a governor, whoever you are, if you breach the law, you must be prepared to face the consequences. So the idea of arrest and prosecution of Moses Kuria on allegations of assault is not wrong by itself, because it's only the court that will determine the guilt or otherwise. But the treatment may not be necessary. A member of parliament is not likely to abscond or leave this country because you are facing some charge of assault. The primary purpose of bail and bond is to ensure you are present, to secure your presence for attending trial. So I think that the police, and here I agree with Aaron, the police, the courts should be more alive to the constitutional requirement of the assumption of innocence until you are proved guilty, to the Articles 49 that predisposes you to be granted bail and bond rather than to be kept in custody as punishment.
Thank you.
And so I think that whether, and we know that Moses Kuria has usually been one of those with what we would call the sharper tongues, but having a sharp tongue is also a constitutional right. If you breach the law at any one time, then you face the consequences. That may not need to be the reason for you to be punished where it is not necessary. So I'm, of course, with Aaron and the others on all this. The clip you showed, I was hoping I would see Aaron because he said he was there. I didn't seem to see him. Although it was dark and there were many people in big jackets and jeans, but maybe he was lost somewhere in the darkness.
He had actually scampered through
or maybe
the
he had jumped the fence much earlier than Then on the tweet that he's talking about, I actually started by saying Poleni colleagues. And I said, welcome to the club. This is a club on which some of us are generals. The club of going to police stations when one of you is arrested, protesting, being tear gassed. And in fact, you have not become full members of the club because I only saw through 2 tear gas canisters. These guys at their worst will clobber you. We have suffered being clobbered. So if you are battle hardened, harden some more. I am with you. I will sympathize. If you call me as an advocate, I will come and assist. But this is how bad it can get.
Well, you know, I was hoping that Otiende was going to finish by telling us what the full subscription fee is to be a full-time member of that club. Debarl, I fully subscribe to the line of thought that there is no excuse or middle ground either as to why the police and government in general, those entrusted with the enforcement of the law, should not obey the Constitution. They must. Chapter 4 in its entirety must be what guides police officers, the DPP himself, the people entrusted with that mandate, including the Minister for Interior, and with the power he has. They must be guided with that. Indeed, Debarl, because this is a discussion we had here earlier, that notion that if you want to punish someone, then you go arrest them on a Friday, and then you can have them suffer until Monday. I think that's very misguided in my view, because if you saw, for example, that time the arrest of Moses Kuria, it was being carried out on a Friday, probably, hopefully, that he was going to be detained and suffer until Monday. So I believe to that extent we must say that should not be so. The rule of law, as has been argued, because then it means, and you know, the reminder that needs to be sent to law enforcement is simple. That indeed this is contained in the supreme law of the land. So they cannot escape that obligation. And I believe that's the way to go. The guilt, as Otiende Amolo says, of Moses Kuria or any other charged person can only be established after the due process of law.
Yes.
And then once it's established, the man can suffer the consequences that the law has assigned to whatever misdeed they are going to be judged guilty of. So I think that must be said very clear, such that no matter what a good case or what a sensitive case the police are handling or administration is handling, it is mired and it is also made to look terrible when they begin it or start it that way. Having said that, Debarl, I also believe that us in the political class, the reaction that we attribute to some of this is not justified. For example, after this arrest, in my view, I don't think that there is any necessity other than just to ensure that the rights of Moses Kuria have been upheld and that his release and the obedience of court orders have been firmly obeyed. I also think that what is making it even worse is politicians trying to cash in on those kind of situations, whereby you find that after most of the politicians have gathered around there to go and deal with that problem, because we acknowledge it's a problem, is again now loading it with politics and becoming a platform and stage for firing political salvos and stories about this one and this what and this is what, and even when going to court wearing ribbons, saying this, and trying to create generally a situation or a scenario whereby you are trying to draw attention for sympathy, for blowing the issue out of what it is. And you realize, Debarl, in my view, and my disappointment with it, because I must state it here, is because some of the characters who have chosen to play in that charade are members of my own community from my region. And I will tell you why I say this with braveness. It's because every day, the entire weekend, I've spent my weekend in Mount Kenya region, in our places. And I'm telling you, the kind of issues we are having there are monumental. If you remember here, Debarl, the other day, there was a big debate you were having around this panel, where politicians from Mount Kenya region ganging up to say that they have not seen any development since they elected a president who comes from their backyard. That has been a big story. In fact, we took a lot of beating here, that you are thinking that you're special. You're saying you contribute. Let me tell you, the suffering of the people in that area is real. It is real. What we depend on in the Mount Kenya region is largely, to a large extent, business. We are business people, small traders and so on. The economy has suffered greatly. People are looking for jobs. Let me tell you, because that's where the majority of the population of this country is. If you go, yesterday, I've just mentioned in our opening remarks, I went to a few schools there. I went to some schools in Kiambu, my friend Debarl. You can't believe that a principal was showing me a whole line of almost 200 students and asking me, what am I going to do with these young people? They have been brought here. I mean, if you go to the small areas, I went for church service in a place called Juja over the weekend. To access the church itself is a mess. It's a mess. We don't have access roads because of the rains and so on. And so, you know, we were thinking that at one point or the other, after we fronted this agenda, that we need to get things to be done, one way or the other in our area. That we're going to have a common front, that we would have a voice, that would be saying this is what we want to get to. Now, we have reversed this immediately. And I'm telling you, I would be the biggest failure as a leader elected in that place if I don't call out my colleagues in that place, that we have chosen to be the choice actors, the clowns themselves, instead of fronting what the agenda is. And so, Debarl, let me summarize by saying this. If we want to deal with the issues that are on the table, we have to separate them clearly. Let us deal with the issues of law, the rule of law, the rights of our people. And I believe verily that Moses Kuria has a right to go to that police station, given a bond, get out. If he takes a plea today, the charge he is charged with as assault is one that is bailable. He should be able to walk out free.
Thank you.
But then that cannot be and will not be the platform. You know, I went to some of the places in Kiambu, and you can imagine somebody going to a place in Gatundu North and Gatundu South and telling people to carry placards and twigs to demonstrate that Miguna is in Germany. Hey, come on. And I mean, yes, we are going to fight for rights of people, but what we are saying is, let us not misuse this platform to mislead and misjudge what our people want. Right. The priority, in my view, is what we promised our people. We promised to deliver on an agenda of development. That's what we want to see.